back to Her Hollywood Highlights with Lexi McKinney and the one, the only, Joe Johnson.
I'm not necessarily the one and only because we have like 4 Joe Johnsons in my family alone. So I'm one of many Joe Johnsons.
Well, you're the superior Joe Johnson in this case, in my opinion.
Well, I can't argue
up
that.
to me. So it's been a couple weeks, right? A couple weeks because we had Thanksgiving. Yeah. And by the way, how was Turkey Day?
It was great.
It was
spent
good?
time with family. I actually turned down Lions tickets. Someone had backed out at the last second. But I said to my family, I look forward to just spending the day with family. We watch the game on TV. We laugh. We have fun. And that's what I look forward to on Thanksgiving. If you go to the game, that's great. But there's traffic. There's crowds. You're not getting back till 5. The game will end around 4. So you're home 5 or 6, and everyone's waiting to eat. So, no, I'd rather just stay home, watch the game, and hang out with family.
The feast begins. It was a really great Thanksgiving. I hope yours was really great, too. I mean, the game was making me very nervous. That Lions game was brutal a little bit in the end.
Crazy ending. Like, we couldn't even celebrate because we didn't know exactly what had happened. It was like, did we win? Is it over?
It was kind of like this for me. I was like, all right, if I don't look, it'll be fine. And I stepped away. I told my boyfriend because my parents couldn't even listen anymore. They were like, they are like diehard Lions fans. Yeah. Speaking of diehard, that was a nice segue.
Wow,
yes,
that's a nice segue.
Didn't even plan that. But yeah, I don't want to get too off topic because we have a series of movies right now that we're talking about today. That is Die Hard, which is a Christmas movie in my own opinion. But this is a controversial subject, and that's why it
comes up every year at this time.
And it's all over the internet, too. Like, those that fell in love with Die Hard right when it came out to now me who just grew up on it, and now it's just like a part of my movie collection, and I have to watch it every year. But before, I used to say and argue it is not a Christmas movie. However, I've watched so many TikToks, so many videos, I've rewatched it, and it does give me a Christmas vibe and spirit. So we're going to dig into that controversy because Joe Johnson over here disagrees with me a little bit.
Yeah, to me, it's one of the greatest action flicks ever made that just happens to be set at an office Christmas party. So does that a Christmas movie make? I don't know. We'll discuss it. Maybe you'll change my mind.
So here's my thought. Oh, okay, and this is the only reason, is because when he gets to the Christmas party, I feel like I am in that room like I'm a fly on the wall. And it does get me like that holly jolly spirit because one of the first times I actually watched it it might not have been the first, but I want to say it was probably the second or third time I like rewatched it because for me, sometimes you have to rewatch a movie a few times to really like soak everything in.
Sure.
Especially when you hear like an iconic line, and this movie has a ton of iconic lines that a lot of people repeat, or you can get T-shirts that say them. But that Christmas party scene, and I was watching it during the holidays because the TV had it airing during the holidays. So I think it kind of associates like I had my Christmas tree up, Die Hard's playing. I've got the music. I think about the scene where they're opening the elevator and they see the
terrorist,
the victim,
with
the victim of Bruce Willis's character, John McClane, in the chair, and he's got this shirt on, and it says,
"Now I have a machine gun."
Yes.
Ho ho
ho ho. And that's like, whoa, this is what's gonna happen next, and that's what really gets you super excited about this film. Is all the anticipation, and it's the cop, and he's got kind of a lot going on at home. There's not necessarily this beautiful relationship between his wife and him. He's got kids. It's complicated. You want him to be the hero at the end.
Yeah. You definitely cheering
spoiler
for
alert,
him. Yeah.
He is the hero at the end, and he saves the day. But for a minute there, you kind of are worried. And then he kind of builds this self-esteem because he's not like this notorious cop. He's just a cop.
Yeah.
And he's traveling and visiting his wife's work. And it always made me sad when he finds out that his wife isn't using their, her new name.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're married. That always made me sad because I'm like, oh, that is really sad. And when you get older, you're like, that's really sad because, he's trying. He definitely tries. But hopefully he... wink, wink, he does win her back a little bit. But
yeah, there's that line about, why are they having problems? And his response is, I'm a New York cop, which basically tells you that, her career has taken her to California, but his identity as being a New York cop, and how do you resolve that? And so that is what kind of sets up the estrangement between him and his wife.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, throughout it, obviously, we get to learn who John McClane is, what he's about. He's very witty. He has a sense of humor as a cop. I think that's what really brings the character to life, is because Bruce Willis was really able to make this character like a real average cop at the time in New York. I mean, I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I think that most of the characteristics aligned, and I think that he understood, crazy things. Obviously, this was not an ideal situation, but of course we see it's an action. It's a thriller. You're on your toes, especially when he's up on the floor and it's unfinished and everything. You see him looking down. He's like, no, no, no. I love his anger. I'm like, relatable, right? You think everything's going smooth, and then you're being chased around the roof.
Yeah.
Being shot at.
Well, do you want to get into the trailer? Let's play a segment from the trailer. You ready?
Let's do it.
Walk out of here or be carried out. But have no illusions, we are in charge.
Think, damn it, think.
We've got a fire alarm. I thought I told all of you I want radio silence.
Sorry, I didn't get that message.
Mayday, terrorists have seized the Nakatomi Plaza.
This channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
Possible crank call. Check the area, confirm.
No signs of disturbance, dispatch.
Welcome to the party, pal!
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay.
You hang in there.
Come out to the coast. We'll get together, have a few laughs.
So that is Die Hard 1988. Released July 15th. So that's one strike against this Christmas movie mentality, is that it was a summer tent pole, came out right after 4th of July holiday, and it was not expected to perform, and it exceeded all expectations. And they actually downplayed Bruce Willis's role in this, because prior to Die Hard, he had been doing the TV show Moonlighting, which was sort of a light comedy that, him and his co-star had amazing, chemistry on Moonlighting. And so when the early trailers, said, oh, there's this new Bruce Willis movie coming out, audiences expected a comedy. They were sort of laughing that Bruce Willis was going to be in this movie.
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah.
That's interesting to hear.
So plus, this isn't his first movie. He had done two movies prior to Die Hard. One was called, let's see here, Blind Date, which was not a box office hit. And then he did a movie called Sunset, where he played a real-life movie cowboy named Tom Mix. Both of those were box office duds. So everybody was nervous about this movie. They questioned whether or not he was going to be able to carry this film. They started filming the movie in November of 1987. And when it came out, the budget was somewhere between $25 and $35 million. It grossed $140 million. So by all standards, it was a monster Hollywood hit, directed by John McTiernan. And I don't know if a lot of people realize this. It was based on a book. There was a book that had come out called Nothing Lasts Forever. It was in 1979 by Roderick Thorpe. And it was kind of the same same premise. There was a cop. He went by a different name. He was in the book, he's at his daughter's company Christmas party when the heist goes down, and he has to try to protect his daughter. And the book has a little bit of a different ending than the movie did. John McTiernan wanted the movie to be lighter than the book. He didn't want it to be as dark as the book was. Yeah. So it's a little lighter, Bruce Willis brought his lightness to it. A lot of the dialogue was improvised because the script was being tweaked all the way throughout production. So sometimes they would just say, improvise. Let's see what you got.
So I feel like, and I did read that online too, and I love it because I feel like that's why the characters had the perfect dynamic between them. Is sometimes it's better when it is unscripted and you're just talking. I think there's another movie, it's The Grinch, actually, where Jim Carrey, it's actually with his movement, his action.
Yeah.
He is supposed to pull out the tablecloth, and well, he pulled it out, and it actually made it into the real movie, but all the dishes and everything stayed on the table.
Yeah.
But it was so good, and there's so many movies like that where I think it's so great that they captured like one of the most iconic parts of the movie.
Yeah,
And it wasn't even like scripted, really. It was just playful.
There's a similar story in The Empire Strikes Back where Han is about to be encased in carbonite. Leia says, "I love you." He's supposed to say, "I love you" back, and they're like, "No, that's not what Han Solo would say."
Yeah.
They tried some different things, and then they said, "Harrison, just do what comes to mind." So they shoot the scene. She says, "I love you," and he goes, "I know." And it's like became a classic movie because they were just running out of options, and they said, "Just do what you think he might
Just
say."
do what you think your character would actually do.
And so one particular scene in Die Hard that I read was improvised is when John McClane and Hans Gruber come face to face for the first time. And they said, well, let's not script this scene. We want it to look awkward and uncomfortable when you accidentally come face to face for the first time. So there are moments like that are improvised. And, Bruce Willis having been on Moonlighting, he showed that he had comedic chops. And so he brought a lot of that to the role. Of course, Bruce Willis as John McClane, Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber, who went on to play Severus Snape in the Harry Potter movies.
I was just going to say that because I did not know, actually. When I first watched Die Hard, I know the Harry Potter movies. Like, I watched them growing up, and they actually scared me. Which one was it? I want to say it was the second Harry Potter movie I was afraid of for a long time.
Chamber of Secrets
at the end, where he fought off that big monstrous dragon that comes out of the dungeon.
Yeah.
I was afraid of that movie as a kid. And it was my dad, actually. So shout out to my dad, because I know he's probably going to listen to this when he hears this about Die Hard 2, of course. But he told me that Alan Rickman was also in Die Hard.
Yeah.
And I did not put it together. And how I didn't put, because he has such a distinct voice is part of it. But he also plays the villain so well in every single movie he's in.
We know it's interesting. I don't know if you know this. Die Hard was Alan Rickman's first movie role.
I did know this. I think my dad also told me.
And he did not want to do it. When Hollywood came calling, because he had done stage plays, theater, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. When Hollywood came calling, he was like, well, what do you got for me? And they said, we want you to play a villain in this action flick. And he's like, I don't want to do that. I'm a theater-trained actor. I'm a thespian.
I'm better than that.
Yeah. And it gave him this huge movie career. Bonnie Bedelia plays Holly's wife. Reginald Van Johnson, who had been on television in various roles. He's Al, the Sergeant Al, the cop who is in constant communication with John McClane over the radio. And Paul Gleason, you might not recognize the name, but he played, I think it's Deputy Chief Dwayne Robinson.
Yes.
He's kind of the a-hole in this movie. And he just excels in that role, because what else was he in? He was the principal in The Breakfast Club.
Which is so iconic, because we just talked about The Breakfast Club. I'm so glad Joe has this notepad, and it's all things that I was going to full circle to. Isn't it just funny how our movies, all of my favorite movies and somehow your favorite movies, they're interconnected somehow. There's some sort of like connection between, we were talking about, of course, the iconic The Breakfast Club, which I love, and now we can see actors and how their careers kind of took off into different roles, which this is a way different role, obviously, than The Breakfast Club, but kind of the same at the same time.
Yeah. Now, at the end of our last podcast, we were sort of previewing this podcast, and we talked a little bit about the Nakatomi building, or the Nakatomi Plaza. Mm-hmm. That is a real-life location in L.A. It's known as Fox Plaza, or once was known as Fox Plaza, because it was owned by 20th Century Fox, who made Die Hard. Mm-hmm. And by owning the building, they were able to do whatever they wanted on the grounds of the building. They didn't have to worry about damage and stuff. So a lot of the explosions, a lot of stuff that happened in the building really took place in the building. They did have miniatures that, for some of the bigger stunt pieces. But it just played a perfect role, and it has a unique look. So they said it's almost like a character in the film. If you want to find it in L.A., its address is 2121 Avenue of the Stars. And when you see it in the distance, everybody points and says there's the Nakatomi building. It's just become a tourist destination when you're in L.A. and Hollywood. So they did film scenes on the 29th and 35th floors. I think you had asked me before, was it really under construction? And yes. The building hadn't fully opened yet. There were some residents, some businesses that occupied some of the floors, and so they couldn't film during the day and disrupt business, so they had to film at night. But it hadn't fully opened yet. So, yeah, some of the floors were still under construction. Some of the interiors were filmed at 20th Century Fox Studios in Century City, but a lot of it was filmed on location at the building.
So what's great is, of course, I always go back to I love the 80s, and this is another reason I wish I could live through the 80s is this movie. And speaking of some fun facts, I want to see if Joe knows some of these facts. These are some of the things that I found out about Die Hard that I think were interesting. The internet's a great place because you can always get all this info. Yeah. But it does make me sad that you're like kind of one-upping me right now because you brought up how it was really a summer film, but it gives the Christmas spirit. Because think about it. I guess if you could think about it in terms of right now, if you were a movie producer, I feel like I would have it come out this time of year. Like around Thanksgiving time would be like the optimal time I would want it to come out. Like if I just created Die Hard and I was going through the process and I had this awesome film that I don't know was going to be awesome yet, I'd want it to come out this time of year just because the Christmas aesthetic. But it is wild that it was in the summer, kind of not the vibe. So you got me there, but I still think it's Christmassy. I don't know. There's something about like the cold nature too. Of course, is like he's running around in his
barefoot.
Yes, he's barefoot.
Top.
He's barefoot, and then the scene where he's sitting in like the office, and then he hears all the chaos going on, and he goes to pull out. He's like, whoa, what's going on? And then he's trying to formulate all these plans and run up the staircase. I mean, there's just something about it. Just makes me feel comfortable in my own home. Like John McClane's got this. But anyway, back to my fun facts. So where'd the first one go? Hold on. So I don't know if you knew this or not, which I think this is very interesting, is that, did you know the role allegedly was not supposed to be for Bruce Willis?
Well, there's always a case where, after a movie comes out and it's enormously successful, you always hear people say, oh, well, these actors were also considered for the role. And it's always the same people. I read that Sylvester Stallone was considered. John Travolta was considered. Yeah. There were a lot of actors that were considered. Yeah. And at the time, they considered Travolta a has-been. He hadn't made his comeback yet in Pulp Fiction. So they were like, we don't want a has-been. So, yeah, there were a lot of actors considered. One thing I find interesting is with Moonlighting pretty much under his belt and then the 2 box office failures, people were shocked that Bruce Willis was paid $5 million for that role, for basically an untested actor in a big budget blockbuster movie. Yeah. And people were like laughing, like, why would they pay this guy $5 million? And it turned out to be a great return on investment.
He definitely earned his $5 million. Yeah. It's a lot of pressure too, though. You have to think about it. I don't think it's always easy to play a cop because there's a lot of, we can go back. I mean, let's think about like Lethal Weapon, for example, because that's another fun fact is that actually the name of Die Hard, Shane Black, who wrote Lethal Weapon, came up with the title for this movie in 1987. So there's my other fun fact. But yeah, actually the role was supposed to go to, supposedly they wanted Frank Sinatra actually to play this role is what they said.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, so interesting. But where was I even going with that? Sorry, I got so off topic. I was just so excited.
Imagine what a different movie that would be with Frank Sinatra in the role.
It's just not the same.
In the 80s, he was an aging, he's a legend. He's a star. But in 87, 88, maybe they had him tapped earlier than that, but still, it would be a different movie with Frank Sinatra, running over broken glass and climbing through air ducts and stuff. It just wouldn't have been the same movie. I don't even know how he was considered for this.
Yeah, and I think that what made it so great for Bruce Willis is that he knew how to articulate every single comment, expression, in conversation, especially with Hans. Like, he always had the perfect thing to snap back at, and I really loved that confidence. That's what you want for our heroes. You want to see them like, hey, man, I know what I'm going to do. You're going down. Like, let's do it.
Well, that's what's funny, how he taunted them and he provoked them, when Hans is like, who is this? He's like, I'm the fly in the ointment, Hans, and he just really tormented them and everything. And it was really great the way he did that.
And it's always the reference to being a cowboy, as he's a New York City cop. I always thought that was ironic. But two, another reason, and I don't know, this might be stretching it a little bit, but another reason it kind of reminds me is because of one of my lines, or one of the lines that Bruce says, John McClane says in the film, that brings me back to just like the holiday time of year, like more or less Thanksgiving, but kind of Christmassy vibes. He's in the air duct, right? He's crawling. He's got his little lighter, 'cause he's, checking everything out.
Zippo.
He's like, now I know what a TV dinner feels like. And I don't know. It's just something that my family's always said when we're watching it during the holidays, because my dad has always turned it on during the holidays.
Yeah.
Like, we're either watching that movie. Lethal Weapon also has a Christmas tone. That's another one where I could argue, because the first one I feel like it is a Christmas movie too. But it just gives me Christmas vibes. Anytime you put Christmas into the plot, I don't care if it's action, comedy, anything. I'm like, it's a Christmas movie now. Merry Christmas.
See, I guess the other argument that I have against it being a Christmas movie is most of my favorite Christmas movies, like, A Christmas Story, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, I usually watch those between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that's the only time of the year I can really watch this.
Watch 'em.
Die Hard is not that. I can watch Die Hard any time of the year. If it's on, I sit down and watch it. And I can't say that for your typical Christmas movie. To me, Die Hard is an action flick first and foremost, quite possibly the greatest action flick of all time. And I argue that it just happened to be set during the company Christmas party, because that's a great motivation to get those office employees all in the building at the same time after hours.
Right.
It wasn't during the day when they were conducting business. It was after hours when people might have had a little too much to drink. And so it was a perfect setting for these terrorists to come in and pull off this heist. So, like I said, it's an action flick first to me, and always will be.
I want to look up what people are saying on the internet, because I think that'll be interesting to talk about, because it is very controversial. I don't know, when you're really into movies, there can be controversy. Like, anytime you're passionate about something, people on the internet, they talk about it. So I want to kind of highlight what some people are saying. Of course, this on Reddit. Reddit's such an interesting place to read things.
People can vent.
Yeah, they definitely get really into detail on Reddit. But a lot of people have just kind of complained, like, don't ruin it as a Christmas movie, because it's not, I was out when it came out and it was not a Christmas movie.
Right.
We were watching in the summer.
Yeah, those conversations about it being a Christmas movie only really started surfacing a few years ago.
Yeah.
And, the first time people started talking about it, I'm like, oh, they're being silly. That's ridiculous. And now it's gotten to the point where every year at this time of the year, I inevitably start seeing the Facebook posts, and I'm like, when are we going to drop this? But people can do whatever they want. If it gives them the holiday spirit, that's fine. If that's what it does for you, that's great.
So this is interesting. Why they relate it to a Christmas movie. This is very interesting. This is definitely stretching it, I would say. But they said, isn't it ironic that John's wife is named Holly?
Yeah.
It's a Christmas movie because her name's Holly. That's their argument. Of course, they talk about the Christmas theme and some of the music that plays throughout, but that's like their main argument, which I think, again, that's a stretch, but now it's adding more ammo to my case as to why I could say it's a Christmas movie. It's because of Holly. But it's also interesting because Die Hard 1, so this is another very, everyone has different viewpoints on this. I think even my dad and I disagree a little bit. But I've seen all of the Die Hard movies, even from the newest one, which I don't want to get into because I was let down so much by it. I just didn't love it. But anyway, I think Die Hard 1 is the best. It will always be my favorite of all of the different sequels. But then we see Die Hard 2 come out, and I know it doesn't really have the same Christmas connotation as Die Hard 1 does, and the details, but It's still got the airport vibe, which I really did like that dynamic. Of
And
course,
it's snowing and
it's
all that.
snowy, so
Yeah.
it's hard not to watch because that one does have more of a wintry feel. So I guess you could technically say that there is some sort of like snowy winter vibe. So that's why you can associate it with Christmas.
Yeah.
But I want to hear your input on some of the other movies. I really like the first one. I do like the one with Samuel L. Jackson because it, spoiler alert too, if you haven't seen Die Hard, the third one is Hans's brother that Bruce is going to be up against, or John McClane's going to be up
This is
against.
always kind of a sequel trope, you know. You off the
Yes.
bad guy, and then you want to try to capitalize on the success of the film. So, well, we killed the bad guy, so what do? Bring his brother.
Revenge.
You
It's
know, they've
always
done that.
revenge.
You mentioned Fast and the Furious. They do that in the Fast and Furious movies. The brother comes back to defend his sibling. So,
Yes.
so for those who don't know, Die Hard spawned 4 sequels.
Mhm.
Die Hard came out in '88. People were clamoring for a sequel. The studio wanted to put out a sequel as quickly as possible. So Die Hard 2 came out in 1990. I saw it in a theater, and I enjoyed it. I don't dislike it, but I do remember it was a little darker in tone because there's that one scene that was like a gut punch, and that's when John McClane finds out that they're trying to crash that plane
Yeah.
full of passengers, and they had altered the electronics on the plane, so they didn't realize that they were as close to the ground as they were. And John McClane runs out there. He's like waving, I don't know, like a torch or something, trying to signal the plane that, you know, you're too low, you're too low. And instead of saving the day, the plane crashes into the ground and everybody dies.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in the theater like, oh my God, that was horrific. Like, it was a gut punch.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I don't look at this movie more fondly, is because
They didn't have to
was
do that.
brutal.
They
Like,
didn't have
you
to
want
do
John
that.
McClane to save the day, and
Not.
instead you see an entire plane crash full of passengers. So that really bothered me, and I know that's
Mm-hmm.
meant for you to get angry against the villain, but I didn't care for that. So that was a little
It was a little
rough.
excessive, I think. I
Yeah.
think definitely didn't have to end with any people dying, for sure. But I mean, you see throughout what happens when they try to make things complex. Because honestly, if it were me and Die Hard 1 was such a success and I had the budget to make Die Hard 2, I would really struggle with what to do next.
Yeah.
And that's only because I just know that a lot of people say, like, the original, there will be nothing like it. Like, you
yeah.
can't even
And
compete
everybody
or
tried.
compare.
I mean, you know, throughout the 80s and 90s, there was Die Hard on a plane. There were Die Hard on a train. There was
Mm-hmm.
Die Hard on a bus. You know, everyone tried to capture that magic.
They just
to
didn't do it the
various
same,
degrees.
though. They didn't do it the same. That's
Yeah.
where I have a problem. Is, you know, you'll watch a lot of films, and there was one film I don't even know. I watched it on Netflix, I think, but they mentioned Die Hard in it because they were kind of just like making a comment about, well, it can't be an action movie because this didn't happen like it happened in Die Hard. And I thought that's funny because anytime they can put something like that into a new movie, I do give them kudos because at least they're referencing true classics, in my opinion.
Now, I didn't watch on a regular basis. What was the Andy Samberg police TV series that he did?
on, I gotta
What is it? Like Precinct something 99 or something like that. Were you not a fan of the show?
No.
I didn't watch it regularly, but as I was doing
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine,
That
yeah.
one, yep.
And apparently that series is full of Die Hard references. Whoever wrote for the show shoehorned in a bunch of Die Hard references. And apparently, and I need to look up this episode, but apparently there's an episode where they visit Nakatomi Plaza
Really?
on the series. Yeah. So I'll have
I'd
to look
watch
that up.
one just for that. I think I've seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine before, but I didn't really get into it.
Yeah.
It's so hard because, you know, you've got comfort movies, and I just live and breathe by my comfort movies. I always watch the same movies over and over again because they don't get old. That's Die Hard for me.
Yeah.
But
And, you know, and since you mentioned it, you know, I always find it funny when someone on Facebook, you know, I know they're just trying to get eyes and views, but they're like, name a movie that you've seen more than once. And I'm like, what a stupid question. Because my favorite movies, maybe my top 100 favorite movies, I told you about my list. Before you go today, I want to
Yes.
share my list with you.
Yes, I got to see it.
But every movie on my top 100 list, I've seen multiple times. And the closer you get to the top of my list, now we're talking 20, 30, 40 times I've seen certain movies. And
Yeah,
Die
that's
Hard is
fair.
a movie that I've probably seen conservatively a dozen times, probably more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how many times I could count. I've definitely watched the original Die Hard the most. I'd say I've probably seen Die Hard 2 10 times less than that.
Yeah.
Because they, for some reason, the TV always has Die Hard 2 on. And of course, you kind of find out like the reporter and Holly don't get along, and they're on the same plane together. I just love that
right.
dynamic.
Yeah.
He's like afraid of her, and I'm like, she's so cool. I want to be her.
Now, I've seen all of the Die Hard movies at the theater. Like each
every
one,
single one.
Yeah. I mean, every time they said, oh, there's a new Die Hard coming out, I love Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm there. And I see it. And then with each movie that came out, they were less and less impressive. I mean, they had their fun moments. You know, one pet peeve of mine is that the titles get progressively sillier.
And worse.
Yeah, so after Die Hard 2, you got Die Hard with a Vengeance. That's the Samuel Jackson one. After that, Live Free or Die Hard, which I think is a silly title. That was 2007. And then the most recent one was A Good Day to Die Hard on 2013. And they're just, those are silly. I mean, it's almost along the lines of the Fast and Furious movies where you get Too Fast, Too Furious and Fast Five and you know, that sort of Fate of the Furious. Like some of those titles, it's hard to take seriously. And so as the quality of the series of Die Hard movies, you know, went down over the years, the titles got progressively sillier. So, you know, with each of the sequels, I don't really find myself sitting down and watching those over and over and over again. But Die Hard is just one of those movies, you know, you always ask me, what would you do differently? There's nothing I would do differently on that movie. To me, it's an absolutely perfect movie, and I'll watch it over and over and over again.
So we had this debate about Die Hard and how I think it is a Christmas movie just for so many different reasons. Of course, I guess in the case of the main argument, which I think is more of like the dominant, what most people agree with, is that it is just action and crime taking place during a Christmas setting, during a Christmas party. So it's not really a Christmas movie. But for some people, this is their whole personality during the holidays. I mean, you can go out during the holidays and you can find shirts that still reference Die Hard during the holidays. Sure. So I guess we kind of have made it more than what it is now, but I wouldn't change anything about it because, like, I can't wait for the day. Like, my boyfriend never saw the movie Die Hard, and I remember, I think it was like the first year we were dating. It was around this time. I think it was around Thanksgiving. It might have been like the night before Thanksgiving. I was like, okay, you know, what do you want to watch tonight? And he was like, I don't know. And, you know, sometimes when you scroll through, it was like during COVID time. So you're just getting so sick of watching certain things on different streaming platforms. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to pull out the DVD. And he was like, you're pulling out a DVD? And it was Die Hard because I have the whole collection of all the movies. So I was like, yeah, we're going to put in the DVD. We're going to play Die Hard. And he really, really liked the movie. Oopsies. He loved the movie, actually, I should say. And so that was a really good one that I was super excited because I'm like, if, you know, I can't make you laugh all the time, at least, you know, I can give you good music and good movie references and ideas. But
I will say this. If you're at an ugly Christmas sweater party and someone walks in with an ugly Christmas sweater that has Die Hard on it that says, now I have a machine gun, I'll applaud you. I'll say, well done. You know, I've seen, if you go online, you can find T-shirts that say, I survived the Nakatomi Plaza Christmas party, 1988. You know, I understand how people can have fun with it. And like I said, more power to them if they celebrate it as a Christmas movie. That's fine. Whatever makes you happy.
There's a meme, and it says, it's not Christmas until I see Hans Gruber fall off the Nakatomi Plaza. And I feel like that would be a really great T-shirt for those that love Die Hard as much as me.
Someone created an advent calendar for the holidays where every day of December you drop Hans Gruber on the Nakatomi building Christmas tree, and you slide him down every day of December until you reach Christmas.
That's really smart. See, that's what I love about movies is that we make them our whole personality after they come out because there's just a certain feeling that you get from them. Of course, this movie is very thrilling. You know, it's a thriller.
Yeah.
There's scenes where he's really fighting characters. There's scenes where There's intense gunfights on the roof. There's scenes where he has to slide down from things or climb into really tight places, and all he's got is what's around him. And I always like that dynamic in movies too, is when they have to like use the resources they have. I think he used the Nakatomi Plaza chef's kiss perfectly. Like he kind of had logic. But it's also funny. I think about his driver when he's going to the Christmas party, and he's in the limo and he's chilling and vibing and hears the music, and then all this chaos is happening. I just think it's so funny. There's
and
just
they
so
give
many
him the opportunity to kind of be a hero at the end. He kind of stops the terrorists from getting away scot-free. Spoiler alert. So it's cool that they give him an opportunity to kind of help out a little bit.
Play an important role in the conclusion, and everybody's happy and hugging, and he's the hero. And then you go to Die Hard 2, and it starts out where he's just very much like he knows something's up. And then he gets in this altercation going through like the baggage, the security, everything, and gets in this rage. And it's just, there's something about it. I just love that. But, you know, it does remind me too, because I also love Mel Gibson and Lethal Weapon. But
great series of movies.
It makes it hard. This is kind of what I want to end on this note, is it does make it really challenging nowadays, because we had some really great cop characters. And, you know, Die Hard is obviously like the model that I think a lot of producers and directors want their characters to have.
You want the hero to have flaws. You want them to be vulnerable. And I really think John McClane was kind of the first flawed hero.
Yeah.
And Lethal Weapon, to a certain extent, was the same way, where Mel Gibson's
recluse.
character just wasn't quite right. There was
Yeah.
something not right about the guy.
He was a little crazy, and we applaud them for their craziness is bad, but they have good morals at the end of the day. Like, you always see them pull through, even though they have, it's always like they have to have something going wrong in their life, and that's like what their motivation is to save the day. And I applaud any movie that can do that, but I don't think, I mean, in my lifetime so far, I haven't ever seen a movie that has impacted me in the same way that I could rewatch like Die Hard has.
Yeah.
Because it just has.
Now, one little tidbit, I don't know, you've probably heard this, but I love the tidbit about when Alan Rickman is kind of hanging from the window, and they're filming the scene, and he's supposed to fall to his death. And they tell Alan Rickman, okay, you know, they had a harness and stuff on him, and they said, all right, you know, on the count of 3, we're going to, you know, release the locking mechanism, and you're going to start your fall. And he said, okay, I'm ready. And he's hanging there. And so they go 1, 2, and they release him before they get to 3. So he, in his mind, he's thinking something went wrong.
Yeah.
So that look of panic, that
Was
look of terror
panic.
you see on his face, he thinks that the mechanism released early and he's going to get hurt. So it's a kind of a cruel trick to play on him, and he probably wasn't all that happy when he hit the airbag or whatever at the bottom.
No, he wasn't.
But they sure got the look on his face and the performance that they wanted. And I think a combination of Bruce Willis's sense of humor makes this movie, and the villain. You know, a lot of these movies are made classics by the performance of the villain. And, you know, I love the moment in the movie when, you know, John McClane thinks that these terrorists have a bigger agenda, a grand scheme, and they kind of play it off about, you know, doing a hostage swap and all this stuff. And then McClane finds out it's just a simple robbery, that they're just after money. And I love that moment, that these guys aren't, you know, this grand organized thing. They just want some cash. And I love that twist in the movie. But the combination of the villain and the hero with his sense of humor and doing the best that he can in the situation that he's in, that he didn't choose to get in. That's what makes this movie such a classic.
It does. It is the best Christmas movie. Joe's ready. He's like, oh, here we go. There's one last thing that I want to talk about, because we've just been having such an engaging conversation. I mean, we really talked about the controversy this week, I would say, because I wish I had more friends that I could talk to about movies like this, but I just don't have friends that like these kind of movies the same way that, you know, I grew up on and watching them. So it's okay, but one day they'll appreciate what these movies are. But anyway, you kind of talked about how some scenes were kind of like ad-libbed a little bit. And one of those scenes, actually, which I think is really quite interesting, is the scene where Hans and John McClane meet. That
Yeah.
was actually ad-libbed. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was reading that online, and that's just crazy because it's just like two casual guys having a conversation, and you kind of you don't see it, but you know that the wheels are turning. But it's so perfect. Like I would have
Yeah.
thought that was totally in the script.
Yeah, and you know what gave birth to that particular scene, because I don't think they had that written early on, and they were like, how do we have Hans and John
the
McClane come
villain
face
and
to
the hero
face?
meet?
What made them go forward with it is they asked Alan Rickman, can you do like a convincing American accent? And so he did his like American accent, and they said, oh my God, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And so they came up with the gimmick that allowed him to pretend he was one of the office party attendees by doing an American accent.
Yeah.
If he ran into John McClane and spoke with a German accent, it would give him away.
Give him away. Yep.
So what sells that scene is his American accent that he pulls off. Now, John McClane obviously spotted something. I think there might have been a German watch that he was wearing. There's something that John
says
McClane
something
spotted,
about that.
which when he handed him that gun in that one scene, he didn't fully trust him. And of course, when Hans Gruber lifts the gun, it's
no
empty
bullets.
because something tipped John McClane off. And I think that whole sequence is fascinating.
And then, of course, too, Hans says that his name is Clay, I believe. Something Clay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is Clay. He says his name is Bill Clay. He's American. Of course, he's at the party, but it shows like a little glimpse of the board that has like Clay's name and the number to where his office
so
is.
Hans got the name off the
from
staff
that,
directory,
and
which is
then-
clever.
Yeah, so I just love those components because I don't know. It's
It's so well
It's a
written.
unique way to have the villain and the hero meet. You know,
Yeah.
I think about it. It's like the same as Batman when he meets, the Joker.
You have to come face to face with the enemy. You can't keep fighting at a distance and not seeing each other. So you have to bring the hero and the villain together at some point.
There's that distance for so long in it, and then the proximity when they're getting closer and closer and closer to that final ending scene. What's going to happen? Is the building going to blow up? Is everyone going to be okay? Is Holly and John going to make it?
Yeah.
What's going to happen? And of course, the iconic scene where he tapes the gun to his back.
Oh, what a great moment.
I mean,
yeah.
there's just so much in the film that was so creative and carefully constructed, and that's what. And some of it, of course, really wasn't carefully constructed. It just happened.
Yeah,
And
it's magic.
It's
Movie
cinema
magic.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
cinema magic.
And I sent you that photo. I have a shadow box hanging on my
Yes.
wall. It has the sweatshirt with, now I have a machine gun, ho, ho, ho. I have the exact models of the walkie-talkies that were used in the film. I have John McClane's badge and police ID, which were screen accurate. And then, of
see.
course, on the very bottom, you see on the very bottom, there's a Zippo lighter at the very bottom of the image. So
Oh, at the very, very bottom. Yeah. From when he's
So that hangs on my wall year-round, not just for Christmas, even though I jokingly tell people that's my Christmas decoration. But, yeah, so I love the movie enough where I've created a little shadow box permanent display that hangs on my wall year-round.
It deserves it. Joe Johnson has the cool. I mean, I say this every week. He's just the coolest guy. So if you get a chance to meet him, you're very lucky because he is a one-of-a-kind guy, and he knows so much about movies. Like, he teaches me something every week. And when I think it makes me happy, though, because when I told him that I kind of wanted to do a podcast, I think he was really excited because it's something that he can totally engage with no matter what.
It's my passion. It always has been.
And who knows? Like I say, I still think that there's going to be like this magical epiphany moment for you where something big has to happen. Your next trip to California. Yes, I just feel it. I have this like feeling that it's just something big's going to happen because I know you've got ideas flowing in there that need to be out in the movie world.
Well, anytime I go to L.A. and Hollywood, magic always happens. I always run into
Literally.
celebrities. I've been to multiple movie premieres. Accidentally stumbled onto Sandra Bullock's movie premiere back in 2005. So there's something about L.A. and Hollywood that calls to me. It beckons me. And when I go out there, magic always happens. And I post pictures on Facebook, and people are like, are you kidding me? Like, how does one person squeeze all of this into a week, So,
Yeah.
there's a connection there just because I think I'm just so passionate for movies and the history of Hollywood that whenever I visit, cool things happen.
Very cool things happen. So this has been her Hollywood highlights here with me, Lexi McKinney, and the one, the only, Joe Johnson. But we've got some great news. Christmas is around the corner, of course. But for this next episode, we're going to do something a little different.
Uh-oh, what do you got in mind?
Joe doesn't even know this, so I'm putting this on the spot. So I know you want to show me your list of your top 100 movies, and that's a lot of movies to go through. But I'm going to construct my list, and we're going to talk about it. And that's going to be our next podcast. So, if you need a refresh on any of your movies, we're kind of just going to go talk and have a normal conversation about our list.
Can't wait to see your list. Can't wait.
I know in the top of my mind, it's just going to be about making an order. I'm going to have to print it out all nice and pretty and maybe have a picture of each movie by it or my favorite scene from each.
I will tell you this. When I decided, I think I mentioned last time that I was inspired by the American Film Institute. Back in 1997, they released their 100 greatest American movies. Mm-hmm. So that inspired me to do my 100 greatest movie list. And what you'll find is at first you'll struggle to come up with 100 titles.
Yeah.
But then the dam breaks and now you're at 150 movies and you're like, oh my God, I got to whittle that down to 100.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
Then once you complete your 100 greatest movie list, over the course of the next few years,
changes.
You're going to want to add something. And then if you need to add something, you have to remove something. So that's the biggest challenge, is making that a living document that is constantly fluid and always being altered based on new movies that you see.
What's going to be hard for me is this year, I don't think that I've had a movie to add to that list. And the Barbie movie is definitely on that list, but that's from last year. I'm not going to give too many spoilers away, but that's one movie that is in my list somewhere. I just have to figure out where I have to put where it would go.
The last new movie that I added to my list was a movie that you and I dedicated an entire podcast to, and that was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Okay.
That was the last new movie I added, and that was 5 years ago. So
see, isn't that
in
sad,
5 years,
though?
I haven't added a new movie. Now, I have tweaked my list where there are older movies that I'm like, that belongs on my list. So I have tweaked my list over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But the last new movie was 5 years ago.
It was 5 years ago. So, yeah, yours was 5 years ago. I can confidently say Barbie movie did get put into that list just because there's so many things I could talk about in that movie. But obviously, I'd have to say that for another day. But a lot of people gave it some backlash, and some people gave it some good things. I just was really upset that it didn't get all the awards it deserved because it kind of brought that story to life. I mean, there was women were not getting what they deserved for that because, of course, Greta Gerwig, Margot Robbie, and all those women that made that movie possible, they didn't get all the credit, and I was really bummed by that. They totally got scammed on that one, in my opinion.
You know what I say about that movie? Like it or not, you can't deny that it's an important movie.
Yes.
And it's important to a lot of people, not just women. I think there are men like me who really enjoyed the film. But it's an important film that I think if I had a young daughter, I would want to sit there, watch the movie with her, and encourage her to ask questions like, why is the world like this?
Yeah.
So it's a very important movie.
And it brings out so many different emotions that we just feel as humans. And I think that's one of the best parts about it for me was that, Barbie was always the dream big, dream big, dream big. And that's always what we did, little girl, little boy, whatever the case may be, you always dreamed about something. There was always something that you wanted to work towards or achieve or be. How many times did you get asked that question as a little girl or a little boy? What do you want to be when you grow up? Because I could name probably 1,000 times. And good Lord, I don't want to know what some of the answers were. I think at one point I was like, I'm going to be a surfer. Lexi, what are you talking about? You're afraid that a shark's going to come and eat you in the ocean. So I don't know, but I love sharks, by the way. So we need to talk about Jaws. That's another good movie. Now I have to figure out where that goes in my list. Oh, this is going to be hard.
Yeah, we can do a whole podcast on Spielberg movies. But one thing I wanted to say about Barbie movie that I did not expect to experience during the film is, you just mentioned how Barbie is sort of meant to inspire and tell people that, tell little girls that you could be president, you can be a doctor, you can be whatever you want. And so I'd always assumed that Barbie was this inspirational, motivational toy for girls or whatever. But the movie criticized Barbie and said that beauty-wise and health, figure-wise, you couldn't live up to the standard that Barbie said, well, you can do all these things if you're beautiful and thin.
Yes.
And the movie touches on that. I'm like, wow, I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
And it hit,
It's a good thing
Barbie
that-
hard in the movie when she realized that not all girls were inspired by
By her,
Barbie. And
yeah.
it was really bold to bring those themes into that movie.
It was, but the way that they did it and the way that everything panned out, I mean, that took a lot of thinking and a lot of planning because a lot of people went in with certain expectations, but I am glad that it ended up being the way it was because I wouldn't change anything about it. That's another movie I would never change anything about.
Yeah.
But we will see you next week or the next time that we have our podcast. We have to get into the details. But this has been Her Hollywood Highlights. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Die Hard. Thanks, Joe, for joining me. And we're going to head out of here. Hopefully there's no snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Any more snow on the ground. But we'll see you next time. Wait.